Hi everyone, I'm Brandon. Welcome to my channel. For today's video, I'm going to be doing my April wrap-ups. The way I'm going to be setting up my wrap-up videos are I'm going to present my statistics in the beginning. I see a lot of booktubers do this and I really like I like talking about the statistics. I like the comprehensive element to it, seeing how many pages and whatnot I've read. I don't really know why, I just like it. So I'm going to talk about that in the beginning of the video. And then in the next half, I'm going to be doing like small reviews for each book. Not necessarily reviews, but I'm going to be talking about them, talk about what I liked about it, talk about what I didn't like about it necessarily. And I'll keep that part spoiler free, so I'm not giving anything away. The way I rate my books is through Book Roast's Excel sheet. I don't really know what it's called. I think it's called Cawpile. But basically how they have it set up is they have different sections and you insert a number for how you would rate that section of the book, and then it averages it out and gives you the total star rating. So I use that for rating my books. I do sometimes change the rating though if I feel like I really enjoyed it, but the list or the Excel document isn't adding it up the way I want it to, because I had one of those books in April that way. So I'll talk about that once I get there. But I just want to let you guys know how I rated my books. I typically stick with those rating systems. My average rating for April was 3.2 stars. This is actually a lower average for me because most of my averages are like 3.5 stars or up typically. They don't ever really get to the 4-star, but this was just a lower month for me. That is because I had one DNF, and I'll go more into that later. The total amount of pages I read was 1,942. I read one ebook, 4 physical books, and like I said, I had one DNF. So the first book that I read in April was A Study in Charlotte by Brittany Cavallero. I originally rated this book 4 stars, but after considering it more, I decided to drop it down to 3. I read this in one sitting because I was just really enticed by it. So I cranked it out really quick, and typically when I do that with books, I rate them a little higher because I think that because I read it so quickly that I enjoyed it a lot more than I actually did. It's a fairly average book and I did enjoy it, but I just felt like 4 stars was a little bit too high for my preference. The book follows our two main characters, Jamie and Charlotte. Jamie is a descendant of John Watson and Charlotte is a descendant of Sherlock Holmes. And basically they both attend the same boarding school and a whole bunch of crimes start occurring, so they team up to solve these crimes. I really enjoyed the mystery aspect of this novel. I'm starting to learn that I really enjoy mysteries, and I've started to read a whole bunch more, so I was excited to pick this up. But I felt like some of the mysteries were a little bland, like they were a little repetitive and there wasn't much oomph. It was like, oh, Charlotte solved it really quickly, so that kind of bothered me a bit throughout the book. But I think it was a good introduction to the characters in the series overall, because there are 4 books in the series. I think the characters are kind of the saving grace of this book. I think the plotline is decent, but I think it was very average and a little boring sometimes. So I think the characters really made the book, because Jamie, our main character and our narrator, he's just really likable. I really enjoyed his characterization, and I liked that he, you know, has this animosity with certain people in the book and how he's kind of overcoming that. Charlotte is like Sherlock. She's a little unlikable but kind of likable at the same time. I think she's a little more tolerable than Sherlock Holmes. I really liked a lot of the side characters too. I think they really made the plot. Like, Charlotte's roommate is really cool. I really liked her even though she was only in the book a little bit, and I really liked Jamie's dad. So those really made the rating I guess a little higher for me. Overall, like I said, the storyline was like pretty decent. It wasn't the best, but it wasn't the worst either. But the characters really made the story for me. I really liked the side characters as well as Jamie and Charlotte. That's why I gave it a 3 stars. I felt like it was a pretty average book for myself, and I can understand why a lot of people really enjoyed this book. I mean, I read it in one sitting. I obviously really enjoyed it, but it was, after more thought, it was pretty average for me because of the plot lines being a little repetitive and a little boring. The second book that I read in April was Legacy of Light by Sarah Raleigh. This is the last book in the Effigy series, and I adored this book. Like, it was so good. I gave it 4 stars overall because there were a few elements that weren't my favorite, but I really enjoyed it. Our main character, Maya, I wasn't a huge fan of in the first book, and in the second book she got a little better, but she definitely got so much better in this book. Like, you can see how her character's progressed and has learned from her past mistakes, and I really liked that. And all the side characters are so good in this story. Like, they're all so compelling, and you want to know more about them because they all have so many different facets. And they're I don't really know how else to describe it. I just really enjoyed the characters in these books. They were just so good. They weren't black and white, which I hate in books. They were all so gray, and it was just so refreshing seeing that in a fantasy novel, because there was a piece of the ending that was a little predictable, but I wasn't bothered by it. I did actually enjoy it because I was excited that that was how it happened. But the second book also left off on such a major cliffhanger, so you never know what's gonna happen, and there's always new aspects coming to life in these books. Like, I like that the author is constantly bringing in new important key aspects to the story, because it keeps building. And also, I really enjoy the world. It's not like super unique, but it's also not like everything else. I think the way it was written makes it even more unique and more interesting. So honestly, I would totally recommend this series. It's so good, and yeah, I really enjoyed it. I really love the book, so check them out if you'd like. The next book that I read in April was actually my DNF, and that is The Bone Witch by Rin Chupeco. I read this on ebook, and I was so looking forward to this book. The concept sounded so interesting because the main character, Tia, I say Tia, but I think it's T. But yeah, she's what they call a bone witch, where she can basically resurrect people, and she resurrects her brother, and so it's kind of about her journey of becoming a bone witch and all that. And I was really looking forward to it because it just sounded so interesting, the concept, and I really enjoy witch stories. So I was really excited, but it was overall such a letdown. I didn't realize that most of it was her as a child. I thought it was about her as like a teenager or older, and that I didn't really like because it's a YA book, so I was hoping for like YA characters, so young adult characters, but you didn't get that in this book, which was a little frustrating. I felt like there was no plot line. Like, you'd get little pieces of what's happening, but I felt overall it was just like, oh, we're trying to train her to be a bone witch. And I'm like, okay, but what's the point of that? What is going to happen? And I just felt like there wasn't anything that was driving the story. And so that was really difficult for me. That's why I ended up DNFing it. Because I didn't like the book, I did rate it a 1 star, which I know is really low. But like I said, I didn't enjoy it. The fourth book that I read in April is The Shadows Between Us by Trisha Levenseller. I fell in love with this book. Like, it was so good. The plot was a little predictable, but like, I'm totally okay with it. I really enjoyed the characters. I enjoyed the writing style. It was just so good. This is the one book that I was talking about where I kind of changed the rating a bit. So based off of, if I was doing it objectively, like, this would have been a 4-star read for me. But I was like, no, I have to rate it 5 stars because it was just so good. I don't even know how to describe it, but the characters were really interesting. I really liked Alessandra. I like how she changes through the book, and it's like not a bad change, it's a good change. So I really liked that. A lot of the side characters were compelling. I thought that I wouldn't like many of the side characters because they're all like royalty or rich people, so they're all like kind of snooty, but they were all really interesting and multifaceted, as opposed to just being like, I'm rich, which is really boring. But basically, the plot of this book is Alessandra, our main character, is trying to marry the king because she wants to kill him and become queen. And right there, that like is what drew me in. And then everyone's calling it a Slytherin romance, and I totally agree. It's so good. I can't say enough about this book. I just enjoyed it so much. Only downside of it, which I overlooked because I enjoyed everything else about it, was the ending was a little predictable, and so were a few of the plot lines in it, but I didn't even care because I was so invested. Again, I read this book in a day too, so I thought that after rating it 5 stars, I would wake up the next day and be like, no, that totally wasn't 5 stars, but no, it's 5 stars. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I know it may not be for everyone, but I really enjoyed this book, and I'm excited to have another favorite on my shelf. The last book that I read in April was Renegades by Marissa Meyer. I really enjoyed this book. I didn't enjoy it as much as I thought I would because it's really hyped. It's so popular. But overall, I did really enjoy it. I gave it 3 stars. The reason I gave it 3 stars and the reason I felt like I didn't enjoy it as much is because Marissa Meyer focuses a lot on detail, and I don't think that's a bad thing, but sometimes I felt like the author was overly describing stuff. Like, you'd have 3 pages of what a building looked like. And I do like the whole world building and I like getting to know that, but at points it just felt unnecessary and it just felt lengthy. It's about 550 pages and I think it could have easily been at least 500, like maybe even less, but I think it could have been about 500 or maybe 450 to 500 because of how much detail she put in. That's the main reason why I kind of rated it a little lower than other books. A 3-star rating though for me is not bad. Like, that's still good. It's a really good book. It's a decent book. Like, but to me it's just kind of average. I felt like the characters in this book were really interesting. That's what really saved it for me. I really enjoyed all of the characters. Nova, who is our main character, was a little like bland to me sometimes because she was just like, oh, I'm a villain, rah rah. Like, I don't know how else to describe her, but you know, she starts to change throughout the book, and that's what I really like. And I really like the characters on the Renegades team. They were all super interesting. The plot though in this book was a little weak for me because, again, like I said, it's 550 pages. Like, there's so much that could be happening, and I felt like at points it was just really slow. I don't want to say like I dislike slow books because, like I said, I did enjoy this book, but sometimes it just feels like there needs to be something to keep the storyline going, to keep you wanting to read. And at some points I felt like I didn't want to keep reading. I just wanted to put it down for a bit. So that was a little frustrating. But overall the plot line was really interesting and like the ending really made it for me. I do want to pick up the other 2 books in the series and read it because I am so interested. Yeah, it was a pretty average book, like I said, but I did enjoy it. So that's why it's 3 stars. Those are all the books I read in April. I'm really glad that I got through 5 of them, even if one was a DNF, because that is a good number for me. And I'm excited to see what May has to offer because I'm already enjoying the books that I've read so far. But yeah, if you guys enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. Comment down below if you've comment down below if you've read any of these books or if you want to, or whatever you want in the comments. That's cool. But thank you guys for watching.